Hello again, welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion of React and Redux, and this is kind of a review from what we covered earlier in the class. And in these lessons, we're going to build an asynchronous app with React and Redux. If you've gotten to this video without seeing the first one, you should go back to the first video in the series in the playlist and set up the app, because in there we've created the app, imported the dependencies, and we've set up our React Redux provider, okay? So that's all set up over here. We've created the store, and we've applied the Redux Thunk as middleware, okay? So with this setup, we've got the basic app in place, and now we can actually work with it. So let's do that. I'm gonna go to my app component here, and what I want to do is I want to create a component that lets us enter a zip code and then submit the message to the service and pull in the weather data. Okay, so and again, we're going to do this with Redux. So we did this in an earlier example just by itself, like using just state, right? But in this example, we're going to store the data that we load in a global application state using Redux, okay? And so that'll be a little different, and it'll actually provide some more interesting options and make maybe a more robust app, right? Even though the scale of this app is pretty simple. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make a new file, and I'm gonna put this here, I think, in the source directory, and we'll call it enter zip. How about that, .js, right? So I'll call it enter zip, and I'm going to import, since we're going to use a form, we'll need to get the use state hook. So I'm going to import use state, and then I'll make a new function, let's call it enter zip. And let's make a state variable here. Remember, this is going to be the square brackets, right? So we'll say zip and set zip code equals use state, and the default value will be the empty string. Since this will be holding the value that you enter into the input field, but even though it's a number, anything you enter in the input field ends up being a string. So we'll just store that as a string. And then I'm going to return a block of JSX, and I'm going to wrap all this in a form tag. Okay, and I think that that'll be the best route here. And we're going to need an input and a button. Okay, so clicking the button will submit the form, or hitting enter on the input field will submit the form. So now in the input, we need to hold the zip, or the value that you type into this input, which will be your zip code, in the zip variable. So we're going to display the value here with value, and then we're going to use onChange to update the value. Okay, so I'm going to type a function in here, and since I only have the one, I wrote the whole function out here, but since I only have the one parameter, which will be the event object, I can get rid of the parentheses, and I'm just going to return my value here on this line. So I'm going to say set, sorry, my phone is distracting me. I'm going to say set zip, and then I'm going to say e.target.value. Okay, so anytime you change the value in the input field, then we're going to get an event, and we're going to look at the target of that event, which should be the input itself. We're going to get the value that you typed into the input, and then we're going to set it on the zip variable, which should update the value here, right? And then that value will be displayed in the field. I know it seems a little circular, but this is the pattern that we use with React. Okay, and then maybe on the button here we'll just call it submit. Submit there, right? Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We can't see it yet, so we might as well use this component. Let's make sure that we export this as the default, right? So let's do enter zip, let's export enter zip, and then in app.js, let's import the component, right? So I'll put it here, import enter zip from dot slash, enter zip code, right? And then let's put our component here, right? So it's a little hard to see, but I can see I got the input here, and then I have my submit button, right? And I can type in the value, and notice if I click the submit button, do you see that the page refreshes, right? So we need to prevent that, right? Because every time we refresh the page, it's like we're loading up our entire React app again, and we don't want to do that. This is a single page application. We want it to load one time and then have JavaScript handle all the changes in the page. So we're going to go back to the enter zip component, and in the form tag, I'm going to add an on submit, okay? So on submit is a function or an event that handles when you submit the form. And a form is submitted when you hit enter on an input field or click a button inside the form. Usually the button should have a type, so we should set this to type submit, right? Because that kind of guarantees that this is a submit button, right? But by default, if you just have any button in here without the type and hit it, it'll submit the form, and we actually saw that, right? So I'm getting an error here because I don't have anything inside this, so let's fix that, right? So I'm going to add a function here, and in this case, right, so I've typed a function into the curly brackets there, and in this case, I'm going to get the event object, and again, we can do away with the parentheses because we've only got one parameter. I'm going to keep the curly brackets though, because I may have more than one line of code here. And for now, what I want to do is I want to prevent the default behavior. So I'm going to call e.preventDefault, okay? And now you can see my page loads up again, and it looks pretty good. No, there's no errors. And if I type a zip code in here like 99999, and then I hit submit, you can see the page doesn't show the progress bar there as if it's reloading, or you don't see the refresh button flash, right? Okay, and the page doesn't flash and refresh, right? So everything here is working pretty good, right? Okay, so now how are we going to get the weather data, right? Let's do that, right? So we're doing pretty good here. Maybe I'll stop the video here, right? And then if you want, you can add some styles to style your form. You can, add any other features here that you want to add. And, that's kind of an open-ended challenge for you. And then in the next video, what we'll do is we'll start in on our actions and our reducers, okay? And we'll set those up. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.